everybody. What do you think is the most important skill that a data engineer should know as we go into 2025? Let me know down in the comments what you think the most important skills are, and we're gonna jump into what I think the most important skills are, and I can't wait to see what you all think as well. So, and I'll go through and read them out in a bit. So we're not just talking about the skills you need tonight. We're going to be talking about the skills that will change your career trajectory and help you go from a junior data engineer into a senior engineer and into leadership if that's the direction you want to go. So we're going to cover everything from essential tools that you need to do that, as well as some critical soft skills that you're going to need in order to, really jettison you through that career path. So these are going to be some must hire skills for really top paying roles. So, and I'll be answering your questions along the way, like always. So, like I said, also, I've got some really exciting Black Friday deals that I spotted earlier today that I added to the end. So be sure to stick to the end to see those. All right, let's jump into this. Again, first time using Canva for a presentation, so bear with me here. Added some animations along the way. So make sure I'm showing it on my screen. Like I said, any questions along the way, just let me know. Happy to answer. Just pop them in the chat. So tonight's purpose, again, we're going to uncover these essential skills for data engineers as we move into 2025. What are some things that may be changing? What are some things that are going to stay the same? What's going to really be important for you to attain a career in data engineering? What makes a data engineer stand out in a competitive market? It is such a competitive market out there right now, especially if you're only targeting remote positions. It is super, super competitive to get those remote positions for a entry level or a early career data engineer. Again, let me know what you think in the chat. What's the most important skill do you think for a data engineer moving into 2025? And then, like I said, I've mentioned this a couple times, but at the end, I've got some exclusive Black Friday deals. Some of them are affiliate links to Amazon. So there are things that I get a tiny, like 1% commission off of. And those are the books that I had identified that are on sale. But the last two things that I will point out are not affiliate. I don't get commission or anything off of, but I really think they'll be great. They're both 50% off, and I really think they'll be great opportunities as you're looking to continue to learn and study in your data engineering journey. All right, let's take a look. So overview of tonight's session. Again, we've got some, like always, in data engineering, super important cloud platforms. How to leverage Azure and AWS and Google, GCP. Data modeling. We've talked about this ad nauseum probably, but data modeling and understanding how to model effectively is super important. So architecting your data in a way that is efficient and maintainable for both analysis and reporting. SQL mastery is always going to be like the number one thing that you need to know. So, and how to write optimized queries for large data sets. When you're talking terabytes and petabytes of data, how do you optimize those queries for those large data sets? Python and automation. How to automate your workflows and your pipelines, whether you're orchestrating that with Airflow or through Python scripts, or maybe you're orchestrating it through notebooks and Databricks. I've seen all those patterns out there, actively using several of those patterns right now. Those are important things that we'll get into. And then communication, we're going to touch on some soft skills. Communication, conveying those insights to stakeholders in a way that they could hear it and understand it and know what you're talking about. So often, data engineers and data professionals, struggle to communicate their technical acumen into their business language, into those stakeholders' business language. So important to understand how to communicate, and we're going to get into some of that. So again, which skills are you most excited to learn about tonight? Uh, Let me know down in the chat. Again, I want this to be an interactive session, so in the chat, put in there what you think is the most important skill, and what you're most excited to get into this evening. All right, cloud platforms. Cloud platforms are so important to data engineering. Um, and we've got the big three, right? Uh, Oops, let me go back. Um, my GCP icon fell off. So we've got AWS and we've got Azure, and like I said, we've got GCP, right? With Azure holding approximately 70% of the market share, Azure is huge in data engineering and in most industries when you're going looking at jobs. It is such a big piece of um, you know data strategy going forward, especially moving into 2025. Companies that aren't yet in the cloud are migrating into the cloud. I'm picking up a contract right now that we are going to be migrating using IICS as the ETL tool, which is the Informatica Cloud Systems, and then we're going to be migrating into Snowflake. But there's going to be some, it's all cloud based, and there's going to be some Azure stuff along the way there too. In some cases, about 25% of the market share is AWS, and AWS is the leader in cloud solutions. So we're talking, it's a lot of the bigger companies that are building, and startups that are building their own specialized cloud solutions, they're probably using AWS. Corporations are probably the Azure shops, right? Your AT&Ts, your Berkshires, your pilots, your those larger companies, Cirrus, are Azure based. And again, that's because they're so integrated. Azure is so integrated with other Microsoft technologies, and those larger corporations have embedded themselves in Microsoft. They have huge corporate deals with Microsoft that lower their cost, and so they're going to go with Azure. So if you're looking to get into a corporate environment, a large scale corporate environment, Azure, unless you're looking to go to Amazon, Azure is probably the way to go and to study in. And then we have GCP. Now, there's going to be some smaller, SMBs that have leaned towards GCP because it is a little bit more cost effective. And some machine learning shops have probably leaned towards GCP. I don't see this a lot. It is just about 5% of the market share. I did have an icon in here. I don't know where it went for GCP, but again, GCP is awesome at machine learning and at data processing. They're all great at data processing. GCP is the most cost effective. So yeah, I do want to mention, something like, this Netflix instance, companies like Netflix heavily leverage cloud computing to manage their large scale data needs. And when you're looking at Netflix, think about when you go to Netflix and it is recommending certain videos for you to watch, certain movies or shows for you to watch. That is all of this, machine learning. That is all of this data that's being pumped into these machine learning models. That is, that's the end piece, right? Is you see those recommendations pop up on your Netflix subscription. So they're using cloud computing for all that. There's no way all that's held on-prem, right? And so Netflix is heavily leveraging cloud computing, especially as it's had to scale all that petabytes and petabytes of data that it's ingesting from all your users, all of the things that you look at and watch and have watched all the way through and all that, right? Making determinations based on all those things. Um, and when we talk about why cloud platforms are important, we're talking about scalability. Think of how, for those of you that maybe have been in the data profession for a long time, maybe you're an analyst and you're looking to get into data engineering, or you've just been in data for a long time. When we were on-prem, it took going out and physically installing something into a, in into a in a data center, and installing additional RAM or installing additional drive space in order to increase capacity. um Hell, there was a time early on in my career where I was running off a database that was physically, saving data on tapes, right? Think of those big reels, like movie reel type tapes, right? For those of you that don't know and haven't been in the data business for a long time, we used to, that's how data was stored at one point. Um, but yeah, it long so scalability with cloud is huge. It's such a huge advantage to be able to instantly, in a second, scale from something that is, for instance, with Azure, you could scale from 500 to 3000 in like that. And so if, for instance, um, where I'm at now, we're getting ready to scale up for our Black Friday week, right? Because they are a sales organization, and we know that our volume is going to be heavy over the next week. And so we're scaling those platforms up in order to handle that additional volume. And that's easy. It's not cheap, right? Things can be easy, they could be cheap, or they could be quick, and you could only pick one or two of the three. So it's easy and it's quick, but it's not cheap. Um, so beware of that piece with cloud stuff. Pipeline dependence. Pipelines are so heavily dependent now on cloud platforms. So much of our pipelines and workflows that we build are cloud based. Think of Azure with ADF and Synapse and Fabric, and AWS with Glue and ECR, which is Elastic repositories where you put in containers and run containers in the cloud. And with GCP and something like BigQuery, um, and then it with all three, all the different, we'll talk about this in a minute, but all the different storage containers that you have with each of those three. Now, in addition, I do want to tell you that, especially as you're learning this, there are free tiers in each of these platforms that you could go out and use for practice and training. Some of it only lasts like 90 days. So when you're ready to do it is when you're going to want to take advantage of it. Make sure that you could dedicate that 3 months to your learning as you're subscribing to your free tiers. In some cases, you do have 12 months of free tiers, and in some cases, like AWS, there are free tier levels forever, as long as you don't go over those free tier levels. And you could put safeguards in place in those different cloud platforms that will keep you from going over those tiers. So most considerations are growing concern. So we have got a comment here that I missed a few minutes ago. So most considerations are growing concern. This becomes more important as companies become more mature. Yeah, cost considerations are growing concern. Absolutely. And I touched on that here too. Cost is a huge concern for corporations, to making sure that you're writing efficient queries, that you're modeling things out in a way that is going to be both cost effective and efficient for your reporting and your data needs. But as far as learning goes, there are these great free tiers, AWS, Azure, and GCP, I think all give you potentially $300 that, in credits that you could go out for 90 days. I know for Azure, it's $300 for 90 days. And AWS, I think it is also. GCP might be 500. But you get this bucket of money that you could go out and practice and play with these platforms and learn and really dig in. You know, that that credit gives you an opportunity to really dig in. Like I said, just make sure that when you subscribe to this, that you can dedicate that time to learn. Um, but also, Balba is absolutely correct. I apologize if I butchered your name, but absolutely correct. Cost considerations are a growing concern for corporations, not just corporations, but individuals that are going out to practice. When you're creating these, make sure that you're understanding how to and actually putting the cost safeguards in place and cost alerts in place to make sure that you don't end up with a surprise $20,000 bill at the end of the month. Um, as an individual, if you run up a $20,000 bill in a month, I'd be shocked and amazed. Um, but um, but realistically, you could run up a few $100 bill if you don't put these safeguards in place. So be sure that you do that. All right. So let's jump into some data modeling. So data modeling is huge, right? Is so important in data engineering. And it is, so for those of you that don't know, data modeling is the process of organizing and structuring data to make it efficient for storage and analysis. And one of the books that I'm going to mention when we get to the Black Friday deals is a book that's dedicated to Kindle data modeling. It was written by Ralph Kimball, who is our father of data engineering, data modeling and data engineering. So he came up with the star schema method, and has a great book with a bunch of examples in it. Really does an awesome job of walking you through, and I'll give you the link to that as we get to the end. But um, star schema, Ralph Kimball, absolutely father of data modeling. So again, modeling is the process of taking your data, taking these big data sets, these tables and these Excel files sometimes, that have maybe 30, 40. I've seen CSVs with 100 different columns, and breaking that up into different tables so that you can effectively model out that data so that for your analytics, for your machine learning, for your reporting, things can run efficiently without duplication in your database, saving space both in your database as well as in the execution time of your queries. So again, doing data modeling ensures data quality and consistency across your data warehouse, across your lake house, if that's what you're using. It helps to structure data for, again, easy analysis and reporting. And then the example that I put in here, we're going to talk here in a second about the difference between OLTP and OLAP databases. But imagine designing a database for an e-commerce website, right? And you have an OLTP database, which is your transactional databases. Think of point of sale systems. Think of ERP, enterprise systems. Think of MES systems that are your manufacturing systems that are used by the people that are on manufacturing floors that your data is being put into and transmitted into backend databases. Those are your OLTP databases. So they do things like capture customer orders, capture sales, capture processing of different pieces and parts of manufacturing on the manufacturing floor. They're efficient. They're set up to be efficient for writing those records to those tables. They are not set up to be efficient to have data models, to do reporting, to do analytics. So your OLAP databases are what you use to analyze your customer data, your customer buying patterns over time. So that's why we split those out years ago from your OLTP databases and your OLAP databases. This is 100% going to be a question that you get in an interview as you're doing your data engineering interviews. they are going to ask you, do you know the difference between an OLTP database and an OLAP database? Uh, they might spell out OLAP, but usually you're going to hear it as OLAP. And this is one of those things when you are self-learning that you may kind of glaze over. So it's an important piece to know as you're walking into an interview. So again, your OLTP databases are your online transactional processing databases. So again, your point of sale systems, your MES systems, your ERP systems, your HR one stop type systems. Those systems are again set up to be efficient for frequent, quick updates. They're set up to be efficient for write operations. So think updates, think inserts, those type of operations. That is what your OLTP databases, your transactional databases are set up for. Now, I will say that 25 years ago, when I first started my data journey, um, we did a lot of querying on OLTP databases. There wasn't a whole lot of momentum or movement into creating data warehouses or even OLAP databases, which were kind of predecessors to data warehouses. Um, One of the things that I started doing 25 years ago was I said, okay, we've got all these different data sources. Let's get them all into one place. And so that was kind of we called them centralized databases, right? It's centralized data stores. And it, so, anyways, early on, that's what we started with. It moved into, data warehouses and now data lake houses as things have evolved. But important to understand OLTP databases and OLAP databases, what the differences are, and what each of them are good for. They both have their place in organizations. They both have their place in data engineering. Understand what the differences are so that you could explain it effectively in an interview and provide examples. So, a lot of people uh, might be able to explain what, academically what each of these two are. Explaining, though, realistically, real world, what the advantages and disadvantages are of the two, and using them across those different type of use cases, and why we don't use OLTP databases for analytics and why we don't use OLAP databases for transactional processing is what will set you apart when you're in your interview, right? Um, so again, OLAP databases, online analytical processing. So that's what OLAP stands for. It's set up again to be efficient for complex queries and large data sets. Um, you get to the point where you're too large, you do want to move into like a Snowflake or a Databricks, um, and that type of lake house type scenario. But OLAP database is set up to be efficient for analytics type processing and reporting. So your examples are your data warehouses, your data lake houses, again, centralized reporting databases as you go back through time. But that's what the importance of data modeling is. Make sure you know this for your next interview. All right, SQL mastery. We're going to spend a little bit of time on SQL mastery here. Why is SQL essential? SQL has been around for 50 years. SQL's not going anywhere. We have new things like we have NoSQL and we have Python to help us, with some processing and some analytics. We have other tools, R, SAS, to help us with some of the things that we didn't have early on. But SQL remains the main way that we interact with databases and with data. It's critical for data querying, analysis, and transforming data. When you think about it, SQL's been around for 50 years because it's easy to understand, it's easy to learn in comparison to Java. Uh, it's flexible, it's dynamic, and has changed over the years, right? It has grown over the years. Uh, you've got Snowflake out there that has its own brand of SQL. There's different dialects or flavors, you might hear it, of SQL as you cross between Oracle and SQL, Microsoft SQL Server and Teradata and Postgres. Each one of them, the syntax could be slightly different between the two or between those different databases. Snowflake, Databricks, when you're talking, Spark SQL. Um, each of those different dialects could be slightly different, but understanding that they're different and understanding where to go when you have forgotten syntax because you're crossing between different databases and those different flavors of SQL is the important piece. You don't have to memorize all the different syntaxes across all the different databases because they do vary from database to database. One great example is, Oracle uses limit, a limit keyword to limit your query to X number of rows, to a certain number of rows, and SQL Server uses top. Not only are they different keywords, but they come in a different, you write them in a different location for each of the queries. Top comes immediately after select, where limit is the last thing that you put in your query. So understanding those type of syntax differences are important. Understanding, that if one doesn't work, go out and Google what the other one is. Put in your flavor of SQL that you're using and say, hey, I usually use top. How do I do this in Oracle? And you'll get results. Stack Exchange used to be the big thing that we all used to use back in the day. Now people are migrating to ChatGPT or Claude or even Copilot. To get those answers, and whatever tool that you use those tools to get those answers. It will help you along the way, help you to be more efficient, and eventually you'll start to memorize those things. Repetition is your friend when it comes to remembering different syntax differences between different dialects. So key areas of focus when you're studying SQL: understanding query optimization. Again, syntax can be different from database to database type. Make your queries faster and more efficient. Understanding things like ideology of indexing, understanding how to set primary keys and why it's important, understanding even hashing, right? And when composite keys, you may need to create a composite key by creating a hash so that you're not using multiple fields for your join criteria, which slows down your query. Understanding joins. Now that leads me into this next piece, right? Understanding joins, being able to link different tables together to uncover insights, but also in an interview, again, this is going to be an interview question. What are the different types of joins, and when would you use them in different scenarios? If anybody on has an idea of what that might look like, what your answer might look like, put it in the chat. I'll be happy to critique your answer and let you know if it's a great answer or if you might need some help in formulating that answer for your interview. Window functions are another thing that's going to come up in an interview. They're probably not going to explicitly say, hey, tell me how you write window functions, right? They're going to give you a scenario and tell you, hey, if you had this table and it had these fields in it, how would you give me, something like the total and the average sales by customer? And the answer might be window functions, depending on what the scenario is. You might be using a subquery, you might be using a CTE, you might be using a window function. All three of those things are important to know as you walk into your interview. For those of you that don't know what CTEs and subqueries are, I do have some videos on those things. Be sure to check those out, as well as having some videos on window functions. So again, window functions perform calculations across rows without changing your base data, right? So instead of having to create aggregations, you could write window functions and it will summarize that data all into one field, and you could still have all your detail as well. So you could have all your detail and then have one field that has, for example, the average sale by department. And that way you could calculate things like variance, right? You calculate things like variance to sale by department, or, if you're in education, you could calculate what a student's variance, score variance is to the average or the median variance, medium score for a certain test across different classes. Again, so this next piece is kind of our, at the end of each of these, I have a little bit of a piece of what a real life scenario is. And so imagine needing to analyze sales trends across massive data sets. Optimized SQL, again, is the key to getting those results quickly without overloading your database. Not only without overloading your database, but again, going back to cost when you're talking about cloud computing, without running up your cost or running those queries that are probably on reports that are being refreshed daily. So important, again, query optimization has always been important for speed. It is even more important as we move into the cloud for not only speed, but also cost. The big thing that you pay for in cloud platforms is the cost of processing. So the more efficient that you could write your queries, the better. All right. So you need to pick up, as a data engineer, you need to pick up a language. You need to pick up either Python or probably Java, some type of scripting language, right? My personal preference, again, my image has gone away. My personal preference is Python. I like Python. It is, to me, so much easier than Java. Java is the other big one in data engineering. Those are the primary two that you'll see in data engineering. Python is much bigger now than it was, say, 10 years ago, especially with things like Databricks and notebooks and PyCharm. Being able to create notebooks and using PySpark has really made Python the industry leader here for data engineering. So Python, again, is the go-to language for data engineers. It is easy to learn. It's versatile. So you could use it for creating websites. You could use it for ETL, ELT type processing, creating pipelines. You could use it for data cleansing, for analysis. You'd use it for machine learning. You could create models in Python, learning models in Python. So, but it is perfect for building your data pipelines, for automating scripts, and for ETL processes. There have been so many times where I have written Python scripts, put it into a Docker container, put that Docker container into an Elastic repository within AWS, and then have cron jobs, which are just jobs that are run at a certain time on certain days. So cron is really just your scheduling method. And it would go out and run my Docker container with my Python script inside of it to go out and pull data and push it into Snowflake. So again, great for automating things, great for ETL processes, very efficient. So the example here, we're talking Python can be used to automate daily ETL jobs that extract customer data, transforms it for analysis, and then loads it into your data warehouse. Or the pattern that I see a lot is the ELT process, right? Where we're switching that transform and that load. So instead of transforming it before we load, we'll load it and then we'll transform it using the SQL engine with Snowflake or Databricks or whatever the case may be. So again, Python's great for that. We'll handle the whole pipeline from beginning to end. Especially, my favorite thing for Python is APIs. When you're hitting an API and pulling data, Python's awesome. There's so much versatility there. You have complete control when you're writing a Python script over how you're pulling the data down from the API, how you're parsing out that JSON payload, which is normally what you're going to get back, and then how you're pushing it into your target, whether that be a ADLS location, whether that be an S3 location. Those are containers. Those are cloud containers. S3 is the AWS piece. ADLS is the Azure piece. Or whether you're pushing it directly into something like Snowflake. If you're pushing it through, potentially pulling the data from the API, parsing it, and then pushing that data directly into a table in Snowflake. Python does a great job having connectors, having libraries that can do all those things, and you have complete control over that automation process. Now we're getting into some soft skills. Communication is so important for data engineers. And will be a piece that will help you to stand out amongst your peers when you're going into an interview. Your ability to communicate effectively is what will take you through your career as a data engineer. Um, it's going to be what helps you to take these very technical skills that you have and make them, and being able to communicate those in layman's terms to uh, to a project manager, to a program manager, to end users that have potentially been using Excel for the last 30 years, and you're trying to move them into Power BI, and you have to explain what those advantages are of being able to take what they've been doing manually in Excel for the last 30 years, and you're automating all that. You're saving them, potentially tens of hours a month of manual processing, and putting all that into a report that could be refreshed multiple times a day, sometimes real time, that maybe took them all week to even get together and process before. So along your career, um, especially as you move into senior levels, into staff positions, into leadership positions, you're going to be communicating with stakeholders that are increasingly less technical as you move through your career. Um, you have to communicate with them to understand what their needs are and translate what those needs are into your technical requirements. So you have to have those conversations with them, sit down, understand where their pain points are, understand what their current processes are, so that you could take that back, write your technical requirements, and start doing those jobs. Um, and then you have to turn around and take what you come up with and share it back with those same stakeholders that you sat down with and had those conversations with. So hopefully you're building up that, you're filling their buckets. For those of you that don't know the fill your bucket analogy, there's a book on it, great book. I think it's called Fill Your Bucket, Fill Their Bucket, or Fill Your Bucket. Um, but it's a more of a leadership book, but it talks about how it's important to kind of create that emotional capital with people, right? You fill their bucket, let them know, oh my gosh, you've been doing an awesome job creating these Excel files for all this time. This is a huge workload, and you're filling their bucket. You're letting them know what a great job they did. You're letting them know that you appreciate that they've done this for so long. And then you're going to turn around and help them, right? And in some cases, you're going to be taking some of that emotional capital that you've built up back out of their buckets. Because you're kind of moving their cheese, and that's another leadership analogy. But you're kind of, in some ways, taking their work away from them, and that's how some people may see it. So filling their bucket first, sitting down, understanding where they're at, understanding what their pain points are, understanding where they're at with their emotional ties to that process, will help you to be able to come back and effectively communicate those things later on down the line. Michael Hasenboss here said, data engineering is the bridge that connects broad business goals with detailed technical implementation, which is true. Again, your ability to take your data engineering skills, your ability to create data pipelines, your ability to write Python scripts, your ability to write SQL scripts, and magically to them get the information that they need quickly, means nothing if you can't turn around and explain it to them in a way that they understand. And so communication is something that you'll be evaluated on throughout your interview process. Having examples where you've been able to take a technical skill, take a technical process, and explain it in a way to somebody that is not technical at all, is what will take you far. I had a manager that called Power BI the power of BI, repetitively. She always wanted to know if I could get something into the Power of BI. And so that gives you, and that was one of my managers, right? And that gives you an idea of, again, like I said, as you move up through these roles, you'll be communicating with people that are less and less technical and more about the business. She was brilliant with business things, not as knowledgeable about technical things. And so, you know, working with her and educating her on those things and helping her to understand um, the technical piece in a way that she could understand it in business terms, it was something that I excelled in and something that will take you far as you move up through your data engineering journey. All right, now we're getting into the Q&A. I know that we've had people kind of bounce on and off here. So what questions do you have about the skills and the technology and even the soft skills that you need moving into data engineering roles, moving into the data engineering world? What, um, if you disagree with anything that I said, let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to have that conversation, uh, and just share. So this is your chance to we went backwards. This is your chance to ask any questions. While I'm waiting for questions, I'm going to jump into some of the Black Friday deal stuff um, that I wanted to share. And notice I'm going to skip this first page, and we'll come back to it. These are again the affiliate links, but kind of some discounts that I noticed. I'll get to that here in a second. The big ones that I do want to point out is that right now Codecademy and Plurasight are both running 50% off Black Friday deals through the end of next week. Both of these websites are awesome for studying for your technical um, interview piece. They're great for, sometimes you'll have code exams when you're applying for jobs, and sometimes it's going to be with Codecademy, and sometimes it's going to be like with Hacker Rank. But Codecademy has, again, the 50% off deal. Great resource as you're learning programming, as you're learning data engineering. In addition, Plurasight has some amazing courses on it. And again, you could save 50% off the annual subscription to Plurasight right now. Go on there after the stream. I'll be sure to put all these all these links in the description so that you've got them. But I wanted to point things out because these are huge deals. Half off is a big deal. You don't see it a whole lot with either one of these, except for at this time of the year. So if you're interested, if you're going to be studying data engineering or programming over the next 12 months, I would go out and get these deals. So other deals, 3 of these are books. One of these are earbuds. And I put these on here because I have like 3 of these sets of earbuds. These are my gray ones. I have a pair of black ones as well that I keep at the office. These are my favorite. They stay in my ear for the most part. The only time that I have a hard time with them coming out of my ear is when I am like loudly singing with them on or something. And I guess just the movement of my jaw with the earpiece in eventually pushes them out. But they have great sound, great noise canceling. I put them in before I'm getting ready to do a couple hour, few hour marathon code session, and I know that I'm gonna get in depth into something. I'll put these earbuds in, turn on some music, and go at it. So my favorite thing. Also, just as a hint, Amazon usually does a deal on Audible over Black Friday. So, and usually it's like, oh, thank you, Fancy. Hey, Fancy. I'm glad you came. Um, Anyways, the earbuds, my favorite. Measure What Matters. Uh, Jay, I'll get to your question here in a second. Um, Measure What Matters is a great book. And just to show you that I do actually have this book, um, Measure What Matters is a great book for understanding business needs, for understanding things like KPIs and OKRs, which are key performance indicators, and operational um, key indicators. Operational key indicators, yeah. So great for understanding and making sure, teaching you how to make sure that you are measuring what actually matters and not measuring for measuring's sake. Um, so many times businesses get caught up in this measuring for measuring's sake, or because they've always had this metric. So you, as a data engineer or a data analyst, being able to redirect them into a metric that is going to help to move the business forward will take you way far in this business. Um, so, so again, Measure What Matters. Data Warehouse Toolkit is the Ralph Kimball book that I was talking about. It's 32% off right now. The Measure What Matters is 54% off right now. It's like $12.50. So it's a great deal right now. Data Warehouse Toolkit, it's usually like $70. I want to say it's like $50 right now. It's like 32% off. Again, Kimball does a great job of providing a ton of examples in that book. There are some data sets that you could go out and download from the Wiley website if you have the book, and you have to put in your SKU and stuff. But and you could actually do the data modeling along with along with the book. And then the last book here is Data Governance. I found that for those of you that are interested in data governance, and it is a piece of data engineering, especially as you move into a senior level, data governance is super important when it comes to the security, the privacy, and the standardization of your data and your data ecosystem within a business. So this data governance book by John Ladley is a great resource for really understanding in-depth data governance. Awesome. So let's get into these questions here. Jay, for transitioning into a data engineer from a junior software engineer, would you recommend any certifications? I personally would target one of the cloud platforms and go either, whether that be the Azure Data Engineer Associate certificate, or the AWS. There's an AWS Data Engineer certificate. I would target one of those. Chances are, as a software engineer, you probably have a good handle on cloud platforms already. Maybe let me know if you don't, and I'll direct you to some resources. There's another book that I have that is I didn't put up here because I didn't notice if it was on sale or not. But this this Azure Data Engineers Associate certification guide. It's the study guide for the DP 203. There's a DP 600 now for Fabric that's out. That could be a good potentially. It's not been out for very long, the 600. So I don't know what the market looks like when it comes to getting that particular cert, but the Azure Data Engineer cert is a good one to have. In addition, as far as certifications go, don't spend a ton of time trying to get certifications. I would instead spend my time creating a portfolio, making sure your Git repository has some data pipelines, has some Python, has some of those types of examples in it, so that you have that portfolio to show during your interview process. That would be my recommendation, Jay. Hopefully that helps. Let me know in the comments also, Jay, if you're not real familiar with cloud platforms, and I could give you that link for that book and point you to some other resources as well. Rohan, do you have a specific process for translating business requirements into technical steps? Um, Honestly, the thing over the years that I found that I've been the most successful with is sitting down with somebody, the person that's maybe manually doing the process right now, because so often I'm taking there's been so many times over the years where I am, a part of the business has found somebody in their org that has taught themselves something like Microsoft Access, or taught themselves enough Power Query, or taught themselves enough Excel, and there's maybe 30 VLOOKUPs in an Excel file, and that Excel file may be nearing 100 meg at this point. Um, and but so many times where the business has found a way to manually do things, finding that person, sitting down with them if I could, if they're still with the business, and understanding what their process is the best way to translate business requirements into technical steps, because then you could watch what their steps are and you can probably easily translate that. However, so many times you're either building something from scratch, or that person has left the business, and that's why there's such a push to get it into a normal data warehouse, or the normal data ecosystem for your corporation. um, so there's so many times that that's the case. And again, it's a matter of studying, right? It's a matter of asking questions to your business partners, to whoever those end users are going to be, and then turning around and um, and then you could start breaking that down. So much of my job over the last while has been, pulling data from APIs, parsing the API data, and then modeling that data out in a way that I could create kind of self-service reporting, and putting it into like Tableau, so that end users could take um, those different data sets and create their own reporting. Um, or a lot of times, like I said, they've manually done some Excel files, some graphs and charts. Maybe they have a PowerPoint presentation that they normally present once a week or once a month to their leadership, and there will be some kind of general business questions that will need to be answered with that data, and that's usually what you could take back to translate into your technical steps. Hopefully that helps, Rohan. um, Hopefully I'm not butchering your name too much. Jay, not doing much in the cloud right now. Would you say AWS or Azure has most job opportunities? Azure, like I mentioned this earlier, Azure has about 70% of the market. When you're going through and you're looking at job recs, you're going to see Azure. If you're going to see a cloud platform, you're going to see Azure over and over again, or you're going to see, again, a small percentage will have AWS, about 25%. Every blue moon, you'll see GCP pop up. But Azure has the kind of the market share on job recs. About 70% of job recs are Azure. But that is industry specific, and business specific. Obviously, if you're trying to get a job with Amazon, you're going to be AWS. If you're getting something with Microsoft specifically, it's going to be Azure. And frankly, there are some businesses that have both Azure and AWS, depending on what part of the business is doing what. From a software engineering perspective, sometimes parts of the business will really like to have an AWS account for that piece. Again, like I mentioned earlier in the slides, kind of going back here. AWS is great with cloud solutions, and so many software engineers love AWS for that reason. But again, the market share, definitely Azure. Awesome. Great questions tonight, guys. Hopefully, y'all have enjoyed this. For those of you that are new Um, there's been several new names here. Uh, I'm excited you're here. Let you know we do this on Friday evenings, 10 p.m. Eastern. Um, I've been trying to have some type of specific topic that I cover, and then we really get into just talking about general data engineering questions, whether that be generally they focus around interview type questions and career type questions like Jay's asking. Um, yeah, don't be sorry about questions. I love questions. Recommendations for sharpening your SQL skills. Uh, so my recommendation is to pick something that you love, that you're passionate about, find a data set for that, and then write a Python script to pull that data and push it into like you could go out and get like a Postgres or a Microsoft SQL server on your locally on your computer, and that way it's free. There's no cost to it. Or again, you could if you're ready and you're to that point, go out and get an Azure subscription, and for 90 days you'll have $300 to play with. But and you could create pipelines from there. But as far as sharpening specific SQL skills, go out and do the whole gambit, right? Figure out what data set you love. I've got I'm a nerd. Uh, as you don't see because the camera's not pointed that way, I've got this Avengers poster up here, this Avengers picture up here. I have a video out there for, and I've got Yoda behind me. I have a video out there that walks you through the Marvel API and how to connect to it and pull data from it and stuff. And so even in Rick and Morty, the Rick and Morty API, there's a bunch of data sets out there, especially for us nerds, um, that you could go out and connect to. But pick one that you're passionate about. There's the New York City Yellow Cab database that gives you all the kind of the telemetry information about all of the yellow cab um, you know movement in New York. Um, there's so many data sets. There's data sets on if you're really passionate and interested in maybe secondary education and you want to study standardized testing scores across the country by state, and like my thesis for my master's degree was on this. So you could go out to the gov some of the gov websites, and you could do some web scraping, get some data from that, and then from there put it into a SQL database, and then you could play it. You could practice with your SQL skills, right? Um, and do work on writing window functions, work on your joins, work on what create intentionally create things like Cartesian joins, right? Like cross joins where you are returning you know duplicates back, so that you could learn what those issues are and what they look like and how to identify them and how to resolve those issues. um, Intentionally make mistakes are where you learn the most. um, so go out, like I said, like we talked about, do the web scraping, do the Python stuff that you may already be familiar with, especially coming from a software engineering background, um, and then get it into a database. From there, practice your indexing, practice your window functions, practice your CTEs and your subqueries. And as you practice them, you'll learn more. You could always go to like we talked about, um, the oops, too far. Um, the Codecademy, and you could go through, and select SQL and do a bunch of SQL questions, but they're not going to be practical real world examples, right? And they're not going to be the things like indexing and the efficiency type queries. So um, I know that I was really long winded on that answer and gave you a million different things. Um, hopefully something. Everybody has their own way to learn. If you're a reader, if you're you like that quiz type um, practice, then maybe Code Academy is the right place for you. But for those people that are more, I need a concrete real world situation, then I would identify something that you're passionate about, whether that be education or the New York City Yellow Cab stuff, or whether NOAA has a ton of data that you could go out and get and pull. Um, so many data sets, especially government type stuff, um, that you could go out and pull data from and do different analysis and studies on. And those are great ways to demonstrate your SQL skills and practice your SQL skills. And if you're a real beginner at SQL, you could always go to the W3 Schools website and start there. I suspect that might be a little too basic for you. You might need something a little bit more advanced. Awesome. Do we have any other questions? Again, great questions tonight. Excited that we've had new people. We do this every Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. If you are practicing SQL, if you are practicing Python, if you are getting into cloud stuff and you run into an issue during the week, feel free to ping me. Feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions. Email is chris.gambill@gambledataengineering.com. The email address is on the front page of the YouTube site. And then and come on Fridays. Come on Fridays and bring your question. And I'm happy to spin up something in Azure or AWS and walk through it there if you want, or if it's a Python or SQL question, then we could, I could put it on the screen. You could put it in the chat, and we can kind of hash it out live online. So happy to answer those questions on Fridays too. I've put those offers out there before, and nobody's taken me up on them yet. So I'm interested to see if anybody does. Awesome. Well, great session tonight, guys. Great questions. I've really enjoyed the questions. For those of you again that are new, we also have a Discord channel. Again, the link is in the homepage of the YouTube site, of the YouTube channel, and you could get to it there. You could go to gambledataengineering.com/services. The contact is up there, but the /services has a link to sign up to get to our monthly data challenges. I was calling them coding challenges, but they're really data challenges. So monthly data challenges, where you could go out and kind of read what the scenario is, download the data set, and go out and practice. And then if you submit your answers to me, then when I do the code review at the end of the month, then I will spotlight you during the code review and talk through your answer and why it was a great answer. So if you're interested in that, be sure to sign up for that. Go head over to the Discord. We're just building that community, so it's not real lively yet. I'm hoping that I start getting people that are on there that'll ask some more questions, but still working on building up that community. So awesome. So if y'all have any other questions, last questions, pop them in the chat. Let me know. I'm happy to answer any final questions. Aside from that, that's really all I've got for Friday night before Thanksgiving. With next Friday being Black Friday, I don't know if we'll do it or not. Just keep an eye out. I'll probably decide last minute whether I'm going to do it or not, but really depends on how Black Friday kind of rolls out for me. Thanksgiving weekend has a tendency to be kind of busy. I do want to show one last thing. Oh, so this is no problem, Ron. This is a little off topic, Stop sharing. But got to see the Budweiser Clydesdales tonight, which was really cool, really exciting. I'm gonna go to my Threads account here real quick and share this with you because I posted some pictures. Let's share my screen. I'll share the whole window over here. Share. So for those of you that aren't on Threads, this is what Threads looks like. Come here. So Budweiser Clydesdales horses. I also have a TikTok account, but so even I'm sure I put in here. I'm sure that even Budweiser Clydesdales need data engineers. These Clydesdales are amazing creatures. They're huge horses, beautiful. I looked up some stats, so some Clydesdale data. The cost of a Clydesdale to purchase is between $5,000 and $30,000, highly dependent on how trained they are and their kind of genealogy. Their longevity, how long they live, is 20 to 30 years. Their cost to train them is $10,000 to $30,000. There are currently fewer than 5,000 in the world left. Anheuser-Busch owns a total of 250 Clydesdales, the largest single owner of Clydesdales in the world. If you would like to support some great organizations that are helping to save these gentle giants, you could go to gentlegiantsdrafthorserescue.org or USA Clydesdale Preservation Foundation.org, and you can donate, you could volunteer, you can help to save these and increase the population of these majestic animals. But this is just a short little video of watching the Clydesdales. Again, these huge animals, huge horses, beautiful, kind, sweet horses, kind of walk past us. It was really exciting to see them tonight. Really, such a cool thing that they were here locally, and we got to go and see them. This kind of gives this guy was taller than me. I'm 5'10". He was probably 6-footish, and you could see that these horses were still several feet taller than him, up to their head. So huge horses, beautiful, endangered. And for those of you that have seen like the Super Bowl commercials where they're running in the snow, even that like the Dalmatian dog that's been in the commercials was there with them tonight at the back of the Budweiser carriage that they were pulling behind them, cart that they were pulling behind them. So again, super cool. USA Clydesdale Preservation Foundation.org or this Gentle Giants Draft Horse Rescue, if you are interested in donating or supporting them. Self-study is super challenging. Advice for making the most of the rest of the year and what keeps me motivated when learning something hard. Oh my gosh. Fancy, you always ask some of the greatest questions. So I'm going to tackle the last part of that first. What keeps you motivated when learning something hard? And this is going to be funny, and it might not work for you, but there's been so many times in my life that somebody has told me that I couldn't do something, and that's how I take it when I'm trying to learn something that's difficult, is that somebody's telling me that I can't do it. And God forbid me let somebody let that be true about anything. I am so determined. I'm like a dog with a bone when I run into something that's difficult and I'm trying to figure it out. That's what keeps me motivated. Is the hardness in itself. So if it's easy and I get bored with it, there's much better chance that I'm gonna forget and not complete whatever it is. So for me, the hardness is what keeps me motivated. Now, I guess a story is in order. You probably hate it when I tell stories, but um, so when I was working on my master's degree, um, one of the exams that I had to take was a SaaS um, business analyst. This one. So this SaaS statistical business analysis using regression and modeling. And I took that test 3 times before I finally passed it. It was the most challenging certification test that I've ever taken. I've taken that Azure Data Engineer certification. I've taken other SQL Server certifications over the years. I've taken Java certifications, and that one had me hung up. And I was so determined to pass that test, and it was like the last thing standing between me and finishing my master's degree. And I'd gotten to the point where I was so frustrated because I could only take it 3 times before I had to wait like 90 days before I could take it again, and 90 days meant that I had to go a whole nother term, and that was just not something I wanted to do. And I spent now for me, it helps because my wife's a therapist. So that helps. And so I sat down with her and she keeps me balanced. So it's important to find somebody in your life that can keep you balanced. The other thing that's good is to find an accountability partner. Find somebody that either a mentor or somebody else that is a coworker or somebody else that is um, in a similar situation to you, whether that be that they're studying for something or if they're also trying to learn data engineering skills. Um, and have that accountability partner. Accountability partners are great for exercise. They're great for um, diets. They're great for learning. Having that accountability partner and sharing with that person what your goals are and what you plan to attain over the next week or 2 weeks or month um, will help to drive you forward, especially when it's something hard. Um, and mentor, I would find a mentor, find somebody that maybe a little bit more further ahead than you. They don't have to be a bunch further than you, just further in front, enough in front of you that they could help you. Um, and if you really get run into a roadblock, especially you, Fancy, because you have consistently been here. Uh, shoot me an email. I'm happy to point you in a direction if you have a specific thing that you have been hung up on. Or happy we could jump on a call and talk through it. But yeah. So making the most of the rest of your year, I like the Plurasight stuff. So again, the Plurasight is 50% off for the next week or so. It could be a good opportunity for some study stuff too. Grateful for your consistency in sharing out videos and helping us learn about this field. Yeah, I mean, so for those of you that maybe new here tonight, I try to do 2 long form videos a week. Generally, one a little bit more technical, one a little bit kind of been lately doing one a little bit more interview focused because so many people are trying to interview. Um, and then kind of do some shorts in between sometimes not, but pretty consistently do 2 long form videos a week and then this jump on this live on Friday nights at 10. So hopefully you find them beneficial. I've tried to be a little bit more entertaining so that they're not so blah. Uh, hopefully, hopefully that comes out and they're not just still super blah. Um, but yeah, hopefully you all get something out of them and learn. And it, I mean, my hope is that it helps you to land a position um, in the near future. So awesome. Yeah. But again, Fancy, thank you so much for really consistently being here. I appreciate you. And Rohan and Jay, thank you for asking questions tonight and being interactive. And Balba, thank you for kicking it off with the talking about the cost considerations when we're talking about cloud stuff. Awesome. So again, great, great questions tonight. Great conversation. I really love doing these on Thursday nights, especially when we do have people that have jumped on and asked questions and made comments. Um, get back on the horse. Yeah, get back on the horse. If you want, um, and Fancy, I don't know if you're on it yet, but you could always um, jump on the Discord, and we could use that as an accountability piece, right? Grab that link to the Discord, jump on the Discord, and I'll set up a channel in that Discord for um, accountability partners. And we will start putting in there every week. This is what I'm going to work on, and this is what I achieved last week. And there'll be mini Scrum accountability sessions, and hopefully that'll help you stay on the right track. Awesome. Well, it is about an hour and 20 minutes, so I'm going to jump off here. Thank you all again for jumping on. I loved our conversation. I love these Friday night lives. Again, every Friday night, 10 p.m., I'll be here. So come on back. And have a happy, wonderful Thanksgiving for those of you that are in the U.S. And for everybody else, have a wonderful week. And I'll see you again next week, I hope. Thanks, guys.